we kind of came up with this idea as we were building it out that gambling would become code for queerness. It's covert in this story. It's hidden. It's kind of cheating. I thought that was interesting. I mean, besides the point that Henry and Gail both make about gambling, where you could lose everything, just the danger and the danger of love.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, newlyweds in Korean War-era America find their stability derailed by the arrival of the husband's charismatic brother in director Daniel Minahan's drama, On Swift Horses. The film tells the story of Muriel and Lee, who leave their Kansas home to start a family and a new life in San Diego. But their plans are upended by the arrival of Lee's brother Julius, a wayward gambler with a secret past, who draws Muriel down a new and dangerous path. In addition to On Swift Horses, Minahan's other directorial credits include episodes of Ratched, American Crime Story, Homeland, Game of Thrones, True Blood, Grey's Anatomy, Deadwood, and 6 Feet Under. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in New York, Minahan spoke with director Mary Harron about filming On Swift Horses. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
This is such a beautiful and also a timely film. We were talking before the screening that the film's set from 1956 to 57 at a point where American society was really opening up and becoming to change radically, headed for the 60s. Of course, we're just at a moment when American society seems to be closing back down. But I wanted to ask you about this, this moment in time and what you wanted to explore with it.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Shannon Puffel's novel, and which was the jumping off point for this. And it takes place from 1956 to 1957. It starts at Christmas when Julius arrives, and it ends at Christmas. So it's a Christmas movie. I had just finished working on a series called Fellow Travelers, which was about McCarthy era and McCarthyism and the Lavender Scare. And that's set in 1953. And this is 56. And it was interesting to me in my research just how different the landscape was at that. It's still Eisenhower era. It's still, there's a long way to go, but you're on the brink of the Kennedy era and the new frontier. And I really, I felt that in the book, and I really tried to bring it forward in the film.
Yeah, and we were talking before that until 1975 in California, homosexuality was still illegal, which is astounding.
Yeah, I think homosexuality is not decriminalized in California until 1974. So it's like, another 20-something years later.
Yeah, and women could not open bank accounts without their husband's permission at the time where this movie is set. So it's kind of an amazingly other world, but.
Which is why she hides her money behind a mirror.
Yeah. But I was interested about the complexity of adapting something like this, which is quite internal. A lot is unspoken. And you feel like the characters themselves, particularly Muriel at the outset, don't really understand their own sexuality. Even Julius, was that fair to say that they haven't really quite understood themselves?
The thing that appealed to me about the novel is I felt like Shannon was talking about a lot of things that we're all interested in, like ideas of sexuality and relationships and polyamory and can you love more than one person at a time? But it takes place in a time before there were words for it. So for me, the film is really about this world of possibility and exploration, and especially Muriel's character goes through the biggest change and really blows up her life, and hurts people along the way to become the person, her true self.
Yeah, and but very bravely as well, even though a lot of what she's doing is like hidden or, her gambling or her love affair. It's still very brave that she's trying to find out who she, and I think at the beginning she can't even say who she is, This wonderful cast of Daisy and Jacob Diego Calva as Henry. There's one character I really loved, Kat Cunning. It's a small part, Kat Cunning as Gail, the woman that she meets at the racetrack. And it just shows like how one small part can because that character who says, I think the line that you say is like the key to the movie. We're all just, what is it?
We're all just a hair's breadth away from losing everything all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That character in the novel and in our screenplay, as we were casting it, was called the dark-haired, sophisticated European woman or something like that. And I felt like we had dark, brooding cast covered, with all of our other principles. And Kat Cunning came in and with this fully realized character that was like Jane Mansfield walked into the room and I was like, wow. So we rewrote some of her stuff and gave her an older husband. And I kind of thought of her as like a gangster's moll who was kind of stepping out and doing her own thing with the ladies, at the Chester when she felt like it.
The sex scenes had to be, I think, very carefully choreographed. I'm always interested in how people approach those. And you've done a lot of them. There was a lot in Fellow Travelers, and Game of Thrones. Someone who knows how to choreograph a sex scene, Dan Minahan.
Yeah, a lot of people ask about the intimacy coordinator because it's so much in people's minds these days. And of course, we had an intimacy coordinator, but I always take the cues off the actors about how we actually design the scenes and how we, what the process is. I was lucky enough to have Daisy Edgar Jones in this, who had done Normal People, which had a lot of sex in it. And she had a really interesting and a cool way of working from that experience. And we used a lot of it. A lot of it had to do with consent and touching each other's bodies and what you were comfortable with, what you weren't comfortable with, and being very clear about it. And, I worked with the women and we worked with the men with an intimacy coordinator. And we had about 4 days of rehearsal in total for the whole project. But they were just, we used sometimes photography, sometimes we used a reference, and so everybody knew what we wanted to do. And then when we got into the motel room with the guys, we just turned them loose. Yeah. And they just, they had a great time and they were very spontaneous and would end up in peals of laughter and, they had a great time.
Yeah. Because it has to be fun if you're going to do
it. Yeah, I think, sex is all in your mind. I always think in every different project, like in Fellow Travelers, the sex was all about power and the exchange of power in the relationships. And this was, for me, was really about connection. And, these people who are risking everything just to be in that motel room or, in the, at that house party.
Yeah, which I love. The film is a very beautiful opening with the photographs. I just wanted to ask you how you came up with that. And it's the photographs. And when I first saw the film, that I've seen a couple times, I thought it was just photos from the past that you were doing to evoke the era, but they're actually the photos from the wall of the Chester.
Yeah.
It's those photos.
Initially, the film just started with him walking down the highway and shuffling cards and hitching, his way to Kansas. And I felt like I needed something to give people a way to enter the film and to say it was a period film and to say, I didn't want it to be sentimental, but I found this beautiful song. And I was looking at title sequences, what I thought were the best. And, just out of necessity, I think we had used a lot of really beautiful documentary photography in our research, none of which we could have afforded to use in the opening. We had, I cut one together, and I came into the edit room and I was like, look at this. And then we gave it to the post producer and he said, like a few hours later, these are about $5,000 a piece, and there are like 40 of them. So we maybe won't be doing that. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. I love the opening titles to Kill a Mockingbird, with the a cappella song and just the child's toys. And I thought, oh, that'd be really beautiful to use the images from the board. We won't know what they are yet, but they evoke, this world.
Yeah, what was good is I almost feel by seeing those photos at the very beginning, you're saying this is the past, but this is also an alternate past that in many ways was a hidden past,
Yeah.
But I want to ask you also about memory, because when we were talking before, you were saying that the novel is actually memory. It's Julius and Muriel's, both of their memories, like
Yes.
the alternating between the two.
Yeah, it's a very internalized novel, and it moves backwards and forwards in time. It actually starts with Muriel working in that lounge, as a waitress and kind of listening in on conversations. And then she's remembering Kansas. And, so it's a very fluid, time-wise. And the same with Julius. And the characters that we really developed, besides having to give everyone a voice and find, the active thing about it and making it more linear, was to develop the character of Lee, the husband, who I really love that character. I think he's a very unique antagonist because he's very sympathetic. He's just kind of in the way. I think in any other film, he'd be the abusive, homophobic, No,
he's
husband.
Just wounded and confused by what's happened, by both these two people he loves.
Yeah, I think he understands. When I talked to Will Poulter, he was the last to come on in the cast. And it was a very hard role to cast. We saw like really interesting people, but they weren't quite hitting it. And just from meeting with Will, I knew that he would give this character a lot of dignity. And we talked about how we might do that. And we kind of added in things of him like listening, watching them. So he's aware of what's happening. So he's not just blindsided by it.
No, but he sort of sees what is happening, but he also cannot articulate it. They none of them can quite understand their lives, really, because there's no language yet.
Yeah, I think it's like, young people being impulsive and following their hearts and making a mess of it.
Yeah. But I love actually also a theme running through this is that, there's obviously gay love, but there's also a love that does not have a name, which is kind of the attraction or the sympathy between Julius and Muriel, which is not exactly sexual, but is like kindred spirits. Or how do you see that?
Yeah, that was really the thing that compelled me to want to adapt this novel. And I'd had relationships like that, and I was really interested in it, and I was actually trying to write something about it. And but it was more of it was coming out as more of a comedy. And then I read this novel during lockdown, and I thought, wow, she really captured this thing. They're sort of like twinning. There's sort of this spiritual connection that these two people have, and this romantic love that kind of transcends even sexuality. So, I remember I had this writing teacher that would always say, like, a romantic story is only as good as the things that are keeping the people apart. And I thought, wow, this is the ultimate in restraining forces.
Yes, and that they don't even understand themselves what their relationship is, that they are so drawn to each other, but without being able to define, it's hard to define something where there's no category for it, It's interesting. There were alternative endings.
Yeah.
I saw a couple of versions of this film in the edit. And do you want to just talk about the ending? And now that you've all seen the ending,
well, the ending of the novel, in the ending of the novel, Julius comes into the bedroom while they're sleeping, and you're not sure whether it's a dream or she's not sure whether she's dreaming that he kisses her or he doesn't. Or whether he actually does, and then she wakes up in the morning and all of the money's gone that she's hidden. And we felt like that was something that we could never really bring him back from. It was going to make him too unsympathetic. The novel actually ends with him, and then he returns from Tijuana trying to find Henry, all beaten up, and he finds the housing development. They're moved out. Sandra's house they've begun to dismantle it, and they're gone, and nobody really gets into resolution except for him when he finds the horse that's been wandering around the housing development for the last couple months, and rides off on it. So,
does he see the notice on the Chester?
He does. Yes, he does.
So he's gone off to find Henry, and
so he's going off to find Henry. He rides into the sunrise that morning.
Yeah, but you felt like you wanted to give, and then there was also an ending where Muriel ends up with Sandra.
Yes, there was, which felt a little bit overdetermined, and I really liked the idea, as we have it now, of her ending up in this contented moment. Just having a smoke. She starts the movie having a smoke secretly, and then in the end, she's she hasn't given up the house, and she's out there and just kind of restarting her life on her own terms. Yeah,
and looking secure, looking confident.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of period recreation. This is a very beautiful one. I wanted to ask you actually about your choice of music in terms of creating the period and the sense of it, and what decisions you made.
Yeah, I knew that, like the overarching idea for the approach to this was to not make it feel like it was a film that was made in the 50s. There are a lot of really beautiful, including the Ballad of the Notorious Betty Page, which looks like a film that might have been made in the 50s, or Carol. I wanted to try to do something that was different, that just happened to be set in the 50s. Mm. And so to that end, the music, for example, I didn't want anything to feel nostalgic, or if we chose a location, I didn't want it to feel like an archetypal location. But for the music, if we were really going to play the music that was popular in 1956, it would have been Elvis. He was number one, and there was nothing else, but I didn't want Elvis because then it becomes something else. It becomes like American Graffiti, or, with a jukebox of familiar songs. So we tried to choose things that were B-sides, or even things that I hadn't even, heard of before.
But the song that you play out on, which is so beautiful, which is a contemporary singer.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we open with a song by Lauren Kramer, who's a contemporary singer. He has several albums out. We did a cover of that song, Mr. Blue, for the opening with Lauren, an a cappella cover. And then he wrote this beautiful song for Henry, that was the love song between Julius and Henry. And we kind of, used it in a lot of different ways, and we ended on it, when he rides off into the sunrise. So, he's just this really soulful, beautiful singer that I feel like when we started putting his music against the picture, it kind of came to life. And it was one of those things. And it was singular, like it was once.
Right.
So there was a kind of magic to it that I liked.
Yeah, that it kind of breaks the period thing, but it in a good way, Does anybody have any questions that you'd like to?
Yeah, the question is, was the chip on the board that Henry left a reference to the Aces, which is the Aces High, which is the casino where they were cheating together. The one that, when they decided, okay, we'll cheat, but it'll have to be outside of town in a smaller place. Yeah, it was a poker chip. So he was going to meet, it was from that, he was going to telling him to meet him at that casino. So Julius is going back to a life of crime. Yeah.
But, with Henry.
Yeah, who wouldn't, though?
Who wouldn't? You were see that you saw I love the horse racing and the racetrack, that the gambling was a kind of a metaphor for you.
Yeah, with Bryce Cass, who's the screenwriter, we kind of came up with this idea as we were building it out that gambling would become code for queerness. It's covert in this story. It's hidden, and it's kind of cheating. So I thought that was interesting. I mean, besides the, the very, pointed, point that Henry and Gail both make about gambling, where you could lose everything, just the danger and the danger of love and of loving somebody, it was kind of like an extension of that idea.
And kind of the addiction of that as well.
Yeah.
I guess the appeal of gambling. Anyone else?
Oh, I'm so glad.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that was the desired effect. I mean, I think the one of the things that was hardest in in a contemporary film to relay is the idea of the danger of what it is they're doing. When Muriel puts on that blue dress and goes downtown to meet Gail at the Chester, she's risking not just her marriage, but she could end up in jail. Yeah.
I want to ask you about just the response of young people to this.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we screened at South by Southwest, there were, after we do a Q&A like this, there's often people that came down, but we were just like inundated with throngs of young people who really wanted to talk about the film. And I thought that was interesting. The people who were the most, I always think it's really brave to ask a question or to come and try to talk to somebody. But there were people there who had been at Toronto to see it also, that came to South by Southwest and came, they were probably at the festival anyway, but they came to see it again and wanted to talk more about it. And I was really moved by that. I thought that was great. But it seems like our demographic is like these like young people and then mature women, like older women, really get it. And really,
and what do the mature, of whom I'm one? What do the mature women say about it?
Well, this one woman told me, she said, "I tell every woman should have a bank account separate from her husband's that her husband doesn't know about."
Yeah. No, it's funny. Have you had anybody criticize the film from a sort of right wing? Has there been any?
There
backlash?
hasn't. Oh, but thank you for bringing that up. No, so far, no, we haven't had any. I don't think enough people have seen it.
No,
so.
But I think that people will be very glad of being reminded, of what you can lose, of what a repressive society is like if we. Yeah,
I mean, it's Eisenhower America, and the McCarthy. What McCarthy and Roy Cohn were doing are very similar to what this contemporary administration is doing. So, I mean, they're just ripping a page from that playbook.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll convince a few people or have a last question. I think I'm supposed to repeat the question. Just that there's Dan, having done a lot of both movies and episodic, that his fantastic use of the smoking break, and how in older movies people used to be smoking all the time and would give those moments of reflection. And so,
yeah, I think I think that's an interesting question. The reason people are smoking is because everyone smoked. I mean, in that time, the things that I made sure we had there were everyone read. So I gave the actors each books, that I thought that their character might have read. Everyone, played an instrument. We had a piano in Muriel's house. Muriel would have played the piano. And people smoked because it was fashionable and it was, it looks cool. I don't know that it changes the pacing of a scene, but certainly I think this film is paced differently than a lot of like maybe modern episodic stuff, which is, moves very quickly. This has it's a little more languorous, has a little more time. And these are people getting to know each other and no one ever really says what they mean. But yeah, I have a feeling, I mean, I did do on this series, Fellow Travelers, people were smoking nonstop. And then in my series, Halston, you're just making me think like, oh my God.
I know.
Yeah, I'm
so
promoting
Halston smoked
smoking.
Every smoking.
Yeah,
like,
actors were so excited to be able to smoke on set. And by the end of it, they were just like, oh, I never want to smoke again. So, yeah.
I have to ask you, what were the books you gave them?
Oh, interestingly, in 1956, when, I gave everyone a big research packet, which they could, like links to news from the time, what was the most popular film, what people, what music people were listening to, what they were reading, politics of that era. And then the books. Daisy Edgar Jones really is a big reader, and so is Jacob Elordi. And they asked for books. And the two books, interestingly, in 1956 that were the bestsellers were Peyton Place, which was a melodrama, sort of social criticism about a small town, Peyton Place. And then the other book that was a bestseller was Jack Kerouac's book On the Road. And I thought that was really interesting because it embodies both of those characters. The melodrama that Muriel is kind of living through, and then Julius's sort of life, in the fringes of society out on the road.
And what movies did you?
Oh, it's interesting. Pal Joey was a really popular movie at that time, which is so weird to watch with Kim Novak and Frank Sinatra. It's like actually creepy, but. The film Picnic was a big.
Oh, you were telling me about the opening shot.
Yeah, the interesting thing in Shannon's book is that you kind of feel all these different genre floating through it. There's the hard-boiled noir. There's the gambling. There's the melodrama. There's the romantic story. But she never really names it there. And then when we shot that first scene where Julius is sunbathing on the car in the winter and Muriel spots him, and she's having a smoke in the window up above, I was like, oh my God, that's a scene from Picnic. That's how Kim Novak meets William Holden with his shirt off, and she's brushing her hair in her bedroom window in a white house with green shutters. And I thought, wow, it was very, very strange.
One last question. Oh, yeah, but your rehearsal process. Because you told me you only had like 4 days?
Yeah, we had about 4 days. And some of that was, we did a day of intimacy rehearsals in person with the women and then with the men, and just kind of talked through scenes that I always take my cue off of them. I don't like to overwork things, but I wanted to talk through the things that they were curious about or they were concerned about. And then our big rehearsal days, who had managed to never have COVID for the entirety of lockdown, got COVID. And so I was on this big monitor in the rehearsal room, the Mighty Oz.
I was going to say the Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
There are really funny pictures of my giant head and the actors looking at me, and we rehearsed, some of the scenes that way.
And did you do any improv, or you just did the scenes themselves?
No, we didn't improvise. Although on set, I would encourage, like for example, Diego is very spontaneous. And we'll add things in a really, and usually I'm really apprehensive about that. He's just you could use every frame of what he did. Like each one of them had their own sort of preference and way of working.
Yeah, so. But it's interesting because in period film, it's hard to improvise sometimes because people sometimes are too modern. But I think whatever he did, it's wonderful. Yeah,
I would encourage him to speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Times. Yeah.
No. So, well, thank you, Dan, for talking about your beautiful and moving film. And thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.